Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and welcome to our most anticipated list for GenCon 2024. This is going to be one of my favourite lists that we do all year.
Just it's your most anticipated video?
Yes, it's my most anticipated video. I absolutely love putting all of the research in. It reminds me of Backchat days, Kickstarter diary days, if you've been around here for that long.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like I've been around here for a long time.
Part of the furniture.
Yeah. But we do, do as much due diligence as we can looking into these games. Of course, not a lot of information is available about them.
Some of them,
Yeah. So sometimes there's a rule book which we can read, but most of the time there isn't. So please take all of our list with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But we're excited to get there this year. We are going to GenCon. And as you can see, I'm wearing my very big, oversized GenCon merch because it's freezing in Melbourne. So
it is at the moment,
yes.
So it's so cold. I mean, for people that are, in really actually super cold places, they're going to be like, that's nothing. That's a balmy weather.
But it'll be really nice.
It's really cold.
Yeah. To get to the US summer is always a delight. So we're excited to see to turn up. And if you see us there, please do come over and say hi. And I apologize in advance if this video costs you money. But we're going to get into it. We're going to start
Spend responsibly.
Yeah, spend responsibly
Do your due
always.
diligence. Yes.
But we're going to start off this list with a few games that we've already covered on the channel, and in fact, some games that hit our table a lot. We went to Essen last year. A lot of those are now having their North America release at GenCon. So we've got a few that these are games that's like, we know these games are great.
Tested. Yeah, these are known, loved games by us.
Yeah. So what have you got on your list?
All right, so the first one on my list is Witchcraft, which is a solo-only game. Again, I won't go into much detail because we've covered all of them. So what we'll do is we'll just put the links to those videos where we've covered them in the description. So Witchcraft is the first one. Then there's also, I'll just bring the phone here. I don't know what I'm looking at over there. Stone Spine Architects, which we even did a run-through of it. So I'll link to that as well. Confusing Lands, which is a cute little card game, 2-player only, which we covered as well very, very recently. And Evenfall, which I absolutely love.
That is a fantastic engine builder.
Beautiful artwork. I just love the cards, love the solo mode as well. So that's another one to check out.
Yeah, I have a few on my list as well. This is the very hypey list because I just think a lot of these games belong in your collection. Rebel Princess. This is a fantastic game that we picked up at Essen, the trick-taking game where it's all about avoiding the princes.
Prince Charmings. Yeah, proposals from Prince Charming.
Now it's being reproduced by Bezier Games in a deluxe format. And so there are a couple of little things about the game that have been improved. So actually I'm excited to bring in the deluxe copy into our household. So you'll see me probably lining up for that. Vegetable Stock. This is a little Taiwanese game that's now being brought out by Arcane Wonders. So check that one out. It's a really interesting, quick little share market game, which is in a very compact box. There's Hamster Roll, which is getting a reprint, and I think it's 25th Century Games. And Hamster Roll is my favorite dexterity game.
I don't like dexterity games, and this one wins me over every time because it's just so, obviously, you actually have the wheel and I don't know what it is. It's just like the puzzle of it. I'm going, how am I going to put these things here? And you can also be a little bit mean to other people, which again, I don't usually like, but this game just nails it.
And that moment where the wheel starts to turn and all the pieces fall off, it's dexterity perfection. And then, of course, recently we covered Things in Rings and Fairy from All Play.
Yeah.
And so they're bringing out a lot of new games actually at GenCon, but those two are, loved by us. We're still playing them even though we've already covered them. So they're hitting our table a lot. Great fillers.
This is another one. There's one called Lure as well that All plays. It's a re-release of another, I think it was Taiwanese game, which we also covered. So I'll link to that, where you're fishing with dice. And I actually found it super quirky and I really enjoyed it.
That one is quite polarizing.
It is
very luck driven. You are rolling dice until you catch fish. And so it's chaos. But check that out. It might be something.
Really enjoy it.
I enjoy it too. And actually a lot of the people we play it with enjoy it too. So that's a great one. There's a couple of games that we have covered in prototype form that will be available there for demo. So Rebirth is one of them. And Luthia as well, which of course we recently covered on the channel. So those are in demo form, so go and check those out if you want to see them on the table. As well as Arcs.
Yes, so Arcs, when we covered it, when it was the Kickstarter sort of days, when it was crowdfunding, it had so many evolutions since then, and we actually got to play it like at its later stage. But I'm really, really keen to play the campaign mode that wasn't available back then. So I'm looking forward to checking that out.
Yeah, and there have been quite a few tweaks since our video on that. So we should probably cover it again in its new form. But anyway, that's enough of a preamble. Those are some games that we highly recommend because we've already played them. But now let's get into our top 10 most anticipated list. I'm going to add a couple of caveats because I am working really hard to fit more than 10 games into my list. Honestly, I'm cheating a little bit because I'm so excited. I'm always so excited, but I'm particularly excited because there's so many good games coming out.
Amy's like, I've narrowed it down to 20. I was like, well, it's meant to be like, I was like, hopefully we have some crossovers. There are no crossovers.
There's no crossovers.
So it's actually going to be 20 games. That's my top 10 and Amy's top 10.
Yeah.
No crossovers.
No crossovers at all. But what I've done is for my list, I have removed the games that were on my most anticipated game list of 2024 because I want to talk about new games. There are two games that are showing up at GenCon, Spectral and Cascadero, both from Bitewing Games, both games that I'm really excited to check out. Spectral, of course, is a deduction game by Ryan Courtney, and then Cascadero is the Reina Knizia game. I'm interested to see how that game stacks up against Rebirth, which is, of course, another one of his puzzle games. So I wonder if both of them belong in our collection. Interested to find out, but yeah, I'll certainly be picking those up as well. So if you're wondering, where are those? I've just removed them so I can talk about more things.
More stuff.
All right, now let's get into the list proper.
So my number 10 is a game called Cities, which caught my eye because of the power duo of designers behind it. It's Steve Finn and Phil Walker-Harding, who's Australian, and we've met and we've had a chance to play games with. So that's sort of extra fun. But in Cities, you're actually going to be building a city, one of many different cities. So they actually have taken inspiration from different cities around the world, so including Sydney, New York, Venice, Mexico City. And so what you're doing is you're going to be it's kind of worker placement. So you're first going to be placing your worker in one of the different areas to collect a city, like little city tiles. You're eventually going to build a 3x3 grid. In those grids, there's different types of terrains, and you're going to be able to put features or other buildings, and so those are some of the other things that you're going to be collecting. So as you're kind of playing out, you're doing your worker placement, you're collecting those tiles. You're also collecting a set of features that are sort of in the part of the market. You're also collecting the little kind of plastic little buildings that can stack on top of one another, and you're also collecting scoring conditions. So you're essentially building you're building your city, but you're also kind of creating the scoring type that you're going to be aiming towards. And also based on the main city that you're choosing, they've actually also thematically linked the way that city looks with the kind of objectives, the kind of collective objectives that all the players around the table are going to be competing for. So yeah, I'm excited for that one, even though it's more of a little abstract kind of puzzle. It looks, this is the thing with both of these designers, they tend to be really, really great at creating very simple games, very quick to pick up, low rules overhead, but they always have something really satisfying in them.
Yeah, and when I was reading about this one, there's something about the area that you go to, you can only draft one component from that, then it restricts you out.
So because of all those different types that I've talked about, you can only pick up every round one of those, and so that's why you're essentially doing the worker placement to just mark, I've already picked one from this area, I've already picked one from this area,
Yeah, which would create a meaningful choice for you because you're like, oh, there's two things I want in this area, but I can only take one. So I really liked that aspect of the game, as well as the artwork, which is absolutely beautiful. It really pops on the table. So I can see why that made it.
So that's my number 10, Cities.
My number 10 is a game called Tir Nu Nog, which is a game that is set in Celtic Ireland. And basically you are drafting from a tableau of cards in order to bring them back into your own personal tableau that you're building, where each of the rows are going to score differently depending on the variable setup of the game. Now, what drew me to this game? Well, first of all, there's a really interesting way that you draft cards from the middle of the table. You have these little workers that are going to be placed on the border of two cards. So you have to sit them between two cards. Everybody is going to place them out in that style in the first round, and you can't go where someone else has gone already. But then in turn order, you're going to be taking one of the cards that one of your workers is touching. But of course, because a card has four borders, you could have other opponents that have their workers there too. So the card that you are hoping hoping for might be drafted by somebody else before it gets to your turn. And why does that matter? Because you do have a series of objectives that relates to each of the rows where you're basically, by a little bit of exception, building out a tableau that has 5 cards in each row. Each of those are going to score differently, which reminds me a lot of a game we covered recently called Goblin Vault, which is a game that kind of uses bidding, which is a little bit different, but you essentially are bringing cards back into this puzzly tableau and trying to optimize that as best as possible. So I really like that idea. I really like the artwork in this game. It's quite beautiful. Interested to see what it brings in terms of like how that tension really builds, or whether it feels a little bit multiplayer solitaire. But because there's that interaction in the drafting component, I'm really interested to see how that plays out. I do believe it is going to be available for sale, but that's a question mark because they haven't explicitly said how much it's going to cost. But I know it was originally on crowdfunding, so this might be their big launch. So yeah, that is my number 10 tier. No.
My number 9 is a game called Don't Starve, the board game. This is an adaptation of a video game called Don't Starve, which there's not a lot of information about the board game yet because it's obviously it's in development. But I was really drawn to the video game. Well, one, it's a survival type game, which I tend to really enjoy for some reason. But also the artwork is so like dark and quirky, kind of like Tim Burton inspired type art. So that really sort of drew me in. And so in this board game adaptation, thematically, you're going to be doing the same thing. You're sort of in this sort of darkish, quirky island, and you're trying to survive. So you have to kind of manage there's some kind of weird creatures, and you're also kind of crafting things with things that you're collecting. But you're having to manage your hunger. I think it's your hunger, your sanity, because you're like alone in this place, and it gets dark and it gets really, really scary. And I think energy is the other thing. So there's a lot of they're sort of talking about it being this real exploration-led type game, which I love. I love discovering things. I love crafting things. So they're bringing all of those elements in, and it's going to be a either co-op type game or solo. So there's not much else information about it. It's really just going to be there for demo. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. That's Don't Starve, the board game.
Does that mean we won't be playing together? It's going to be a solo?
Well, if you'll join me in the co-op, I feel like you'll humor it for a bit. Be like, I'll watch you play a little bit. Maybe like you'll play
maybe
one. So that's the other thing. You can actually save. So you can save the progress. Even though it's like a campaign type thing. I think it's got different scenarios. You can do either individual scenarios or campaigns. Nothing about it is destructive. So you're not actually going to be eliminating or destroying anything along the way. So you can always reset or resell it after.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's Don't Starve, the board game.
My number 9 is a game called Landmarks. And what's interesting is we actually had the opportunity to play the prototype of this already.
Yes.
When did we play that?
Dice Tower West. Yeah.
Dice Tower West. And this game is, if you like word games, this is probably the word game that is on my list for this year.
And sort of deduction, I guess?
Yeah, it is a little bit of deduction. It's like a word puzzle where you are trying to aim for word associations. And the way it works is one of the players is going to be guiding the rest of the team. So I believe there is a competitive mode, but we played the cooperative mode where you are communicating to the rest of the group a word that is going to help them build a path through an island. And essentially, I think the idea of the game is you've got a broken walkie-talkie, your friends are all trapped on an island, and you can only communicate one word. So that word has to give them an idea of which direction to take. And you're trying to get to the exit, but you also need to get to water, you can get to treasure, and you're trying to avoid traps and curses. And so you're moving through this map of hexes, and the person who's helping you, the person who's communicating the clues, is going to be writing a word on a hex that you're going to be adding to the map. And you're going to have to try and guess where that next word goes based on all the other words around it. So when you're giving a clue, you're like, well, I really want them to associate it with that word that's already on there because that will send them in that direction, but not that word over there. And so it's a bit like, a game like Codenames, I suppose, where you're trying to think of associations that more clearly give you a defined answer and have nothing to do with the other words.
Can't be too ambiguous because then you might send them in a wrong direction.
Yeah, which of course always ends up with this, kind of funny miscommunications where you're like, oh, of course, that's definitely associated with that, and now I've sent you into a trap. But
or fighting with the once you know what it was, fighting with the guide, going, why would you use that word? Yeah.
Yeah, but I really like the physicality of this game. I enjoy that it's like you're trying to work your way through a path. There hasn't been much out there about this game, but it just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. But I think that it's going to make a lot of people really happy as more of like a party game type filler style game. So that is my number 9, Landmarks.
My number 8 is a game called Seers Catalog, which is by Taylor Rayner from Taylor's Trick Taking Table, the trick taking channel. So make sure you check that out if you haven't already. Now, this game is called an almost shedding game. The theme of it is it's a play on words of like a Seers catalog, but it's Seers because it's all about like werewolf catching. So like a lot of the items that you're collecting is all kind of werewolf adjacent or themed. And so what you're doing is every player is going to have different artifacts that will allow you to kind of break the rules of a regular sort of shedding game. Or manipulate your hand essentially. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to not be the person who goes out first, because if you're the person who goes out first, you get 0 points. But if you are not the person who goes out first, everyone else is going to get minus points for every card that they've got in their hand. However, if you've managed to get to 5 cards or fewer in your hand, you have a bonus of being able to have positive points for your lowest numbered card. So it's incentivizing you to try and keep higher number cards. But again, if you're only leaving yourself with higher number cards, it's very likely that you'll end up having to be the one that goes out first, because you always must play if you can. So well, actually, you can pass originally, but as soon as you go down to 5 cards or less, you can't pass voluntarily. So I find that it's quite a quirky, and obviously in terms of like the shedding mechanics, like you can either play singles and then everyone else has to follow with higher singles or doubles or 3 of a kind, and it's the same sort of thing. So yeah, I'm intrigued by this one. I feel like the theme is really quirky, but yeah, keen to check it out.
And you missed that this is actually a re-implementation or a re-theming
of Owl.
Yes, of a game called Owl, which is Of What's Left, which was an Owl-themed version of this game, which I believe Taylor self-published, and now this has been picked up by Bezier. It's been given this updated setting, and maybe some of the tweaking of the action cards, and so I'm really intrigued to see how it compares to Owl. We do own Owl, but yeah, that, you know, I'm terrible at shedding games, and I remember Taylor was teaching me Owl like late at night at Dice Tower West, and I just could not grasp the number of rules, but that says more about me staying up way too late at Dice Tower West than it does about this game. But yeah, really interested to see what they do with Seers Catalog.
That's Seers Catalog.
My number 8 is March of the Ants Evolved. Now, this is only going to be in demo format. It is an evolved version or a second edition of March of the Ants, which is a game. One of the designers is Tim Eisner, but this game is a 4X game that plays in under 90 minutes, but I'm burying the lead because the theme is ants.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It is. And so all the players, instead of playing as some kind of faction in space, you're playing as a different colony of ants, and you're all trying to vie for control over the Great Tunnel. And just like in a 4X game, you're going to be revealing you tiles that have tunnels in them that can have areas where you can place out your ants. And so this is such a quirky theme that it's always been on my radar. Just have never tried this game before. I was really happy to hear that they're working on bringing it back, and they're making some modifications. So they are listening to the community about things rules that didn't quite land, and they're changing some of the mechanics, which is cool. But they're also giving the art a complete overhaul, which is a bit of a barrier for me. It's almost 10 years old now, so the graphic design does look a bit dated. So I'm excited to see how they update that, streamline it, make it easier for people to get it to the table. I just love the theme. Also, the original had a couple of expansions as well, and Tim has said on BGG that the best of a couple of those expansions will be brought into the base game as well. So you can get it all in that one package. So yeah, really excited to see this. Hopefully maybe even get a chance to play it at GenCon, though it's very hard to play games at GenCon.
It is quite tricky,
but I'm looking forward to seeing how it's coming together. And that's going to be a demo for a game that's launching in 2025. That is my number 8, March of the Ants Evolved.
My number 7 is a game called Cafe Baras, which was on my most anticipated list of this year. And in this game, you're very, very adorable capybaras trying to run the coziest little cafe. And so you're going to be acquiring different things to be able to serve to different customers, ultimately with the goal of meeting as many needs as possible, ideally all of the needs of certain customers, so that they can become loyals or regular customers, because that's going to be the thing that attracts a lot of points at the end. This game is just, it feels like, this is from Roberta Taylor, who did Creature Comforts and Maple Valley. So I feel like it's going to be in a similar range in terms of complexity. So it's fairly accessible, but I feel like it's going to be still quite satisfying. It's very card driven, and I really enjoy sort of card type driven games. The graphic, like the artwork on it is just super adorable, and the theme, I absolutely love this theme of creating this like super cozy cafe, and so picking the decor and picking the different items that you're going to be able to serve. So yeah, that's one that I'm really looking forward to. That is Cafe Baras.
My number 7 is a trick-taking card game, and there are quite a few trick takers that are coming out at GenCon. I could have probably made an entire list of Japanese games, my top 10 of that, but I didn't do that because I'm trying to follow the rules. So I've just included one, and that is Lone Wolves, and this is a 2-player only trick-taking game. It is like a dueling game where you are going to be playing cards out into different territories and to try and vie for control of those territories. So there's a bit of an area majority type mechanic. But interestingly, one of the designers of this game is a very I would say, prolific kind of trick-taking designer from Japan. They were the designer of Trick and Trade, which is a game that we have, and Four Clans Conflict, so both quite revered trick-taking games in the space. So, of course, I was very intrigued by this. I think one interesting element is that when you lose a territory, so if you play a card out and lose that territory because obviously you've played a weaker card, you get a scar. And when you get a scar, you're going to get some kind of bonus or token that allows you to then, in a way, kind of, I think, catch up, allows you to manipulate your card value or perhaps the scoring of another territory. And also this trick-taking game has a shifting trump suit as well. So really intrigued by that. Still really enjoy 2-player trick-taking games. They have to be quite creative because it's a difficult thing to do to make them 2-player. So really looking forward to picking that up. It will be available to for sale. That is my number 7, Lone Wolves.
My number 6 is a game called Fromage, which is also in our most anticipated list. And in this game, you are cheese makers, and you have, the board is one big, what do you call it? Wedge? No, it's not a wedge. One big wheel of cheese. But the areas are wedges. So it's going to be a simultaneous action, a competitive game, and everyone's going to be playing their their cheese workers into just the section that is in front of them. So that makes it a bit more streamlined in that you just have the section in front of you to worry about. Now, all the different sections work slightly differently. So you usually can, there's a top area where you can gain resources, and then there's a bottom area which is again like kind of like the little mini game of that section. So some of them are going to be about area control, some of them are going to be about kind of completing different tables, and so they all will score differently. But the key thing with this is, as you're placing your workers, depending on the way, well, one, they have specific places where they can or cannot be located based on the type of cheese. So you have 3 different workers, and I can't remember, it's like a soft cheese, hard cheese, and something else, creamy cheese maybe. And then, so what you're doing is, as you're placing them, they're going to be aiming, the pointy bit of that wedge is going to be aiming in different directions. And so you lose that worker for now, because then at the end of at the end of that placement and taking whatever action, the whole wheel of cheese will turn, and you don't get access to that worker back until the pointy bit of that worker is pointing back at you again. So they do actually mark it on the board. It tells you it's going to be maybe 1 turn or 2 turns before you can get them back.
That's so clever though. That is like, because the wheel is turning and then it comes back to facing you.
That's the aging of that cheese. So it's like you're kind of waiting 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And along the way, obviously, there's recipe fulfillment. So there's going to be particular recipes that you're going to be trying to complete based on like, oh, this needs to be a hard cheese and it needs to be aged for this amount of time. And it might need to have fruit. So that's one of the things that you're also collecting, one of the types of resources. And then, and Euro style, there's all sorts of different like ways of obviously getting points by the end. So it looks really intriguing. I absolutely love the theme. So I'm keen to
I love the theme
check it
too.
out.
And the table presence is going to be great. And now I wish it was on my list, but I
It's
can't.
on my list. It's fine.
I can't put everything on my list.
As long as it's on one of our lists, it means that it'll hopefully make it to our
Is it
place.
available for sale?
It is. I believe it's going to be $50 US. Yeah, it's what it's listed at for now.
That's exciting, and
exciting.
we're gonna have to bring big suitcases.
Again, yeah.
Again,
So just
again.
suitcase within suitcase to then have games within games to pack on the way
And then we'll
back.
have our whole video. Oh, so exciting time of year. My number 6 is a game called Gnome Hollow, which is actually a game that only recently came onto my radar. A few content creators have covered it. I hadn't heard much about it, honestly, but the more I looked into it, the more it seems like a really intriguing puzzle. It's kind of like Carcassonne plus. And so it does, in my mind, it plays out a lot like Carcassonne in that you are drafting tiles in order to place them down into a shared puzzle where you're going to be creating these rings of track that have mushrooms on them. And you're going to be placing out, and because I've mentioned Carcassonne, I won't call them meeples, but essentially they're meeples. You're not meeples, onto parts of this track in order to claim them. And when a circle is complete or a ring of track is complete, it's going to score. But also you're going to mark it off on your player board because you're trying to get rings of different sizes marked off on your player board. And that's going to be, I think, one of the main ways of scoring. But there's also this like set collection game, and the workers that you're placing out, the not meeples, they also get used as workers in other parts of the board. So it feels like there's kind of a tightness around whether you are out there claiming parts of the path or whether you're using them for workers to go get other things done, like collecting differentiated types of flowers. There's also these signposts that are really cute that get added to the board, and then they act, I believe, as another benefit to players who place their workers in that area as well. So it feels like there's a lot of layers, but it also feels like something that would be accessible. I really love that the designer actually did all of the original artwork for this game themselves and used watercolor, and so I hope they retain some of their original art in it because it is quite beautiful. But this is a puzzle that I'm really keen to check out. It will be available for sale at GenCon, I believe, and they said that they're going to have the deluxe components there as well, so I'll probably upgrade, let's be honest. But yeah, really intrigued to check that one out. That is my number 6, Gnome Hollow.
My number 5 is a game called Citizens of the Spark that has beautiful artwork with these sort of majestic anthropomorphic animals. And in this game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to recruit those animals to create a bit of a tableau for yourself of different citizens. So these are like your kind of animal citizens who are, this is sort of the element of the spark. So it's like their kind of unique sort of power. Now there's different types of citizens, and you're trying to, I believe when you're collecting them, when you're recruiting them, you're going to be recruiting sets of cards, like kind of groups of cards, and then allocating them in like with like citizens to then activate one of your types of citizens. But then when you activate one of those types of citizens, you actually lose that card. It also means that everyone around the table can activate a similar citizen as well. So you kind of have to be mindful of as you're doing that. I couldn't find a lot more information around it, but it is kind of card driven.
It's going to be only demo at
only
GenCon.
demo, yeah. Card driven, which I love. The artwork was just so striking, and it's just like, yeah, I'm super intrigued by that.
As soon as I saw the artwork of this game, I sent it to Maggie and I said, I bet this is on your list. And she was like, it is.
It is. It is. Oh, it's
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Yeah, so that's Citizens of the Spark.
My number 5 is a game called The Fog Escape from Paradise, and this is such a wacky theme. Basically, there is an island where there's this mysterious fog that's taking over, and villagers are just disappearing. And so what you're trying to do is get the villagers off this island and onto the rescue boats. And it's competitive though, it's not cooperative. It sounds like it would be a cooperative game, but in fact you are trying to save your villagers. And so the way this game is set up is that it's like, it looks a bit like a checkers board, or, you know, a very abstract puzzle where you've got a lot of different villages that are on this grid. And in the first round, you are going to be kind of assigning those villages to your player color. So you're going to be choosing which villages you want to be your own villages. And, you know, of course, wouldn't you want to just be as close to the boats as possible, like the villages that are closest to the boats? But that's not always the case, because you also want to try and create chains of your own villages that are in your color because of the way the movement works. And that's a key part of this game, is that each of the villages have a different way that they move around the map. And so kind of like a game of chess, you have to be thinking about what is its movement ability and how am I going to leverage that. And I feel like as the turns go on in the second phase, where you are moving your villagers to get onto the boat, you need to be opportunistic, because as other players create spaces, there might be a villager that can jump into that space, or you might use a particular villager to bump some of your other villagers forward, because on your turn you only get 7 movement points, and that's tracked with a little tracker, and every time you make a particular type of move, it's going to cost you movement. And if you're doing things that are a little bit more tricky in the puzzle, it's going to cost you more movement. And so the hard thing about this game is the tension, because it's a race and there's a fog. So there's a literal like fog element in this game that is moving up the board and taking villagers with it as it moves up the board. You're like, this sounds horrible.
Theme.
Yeah, it is. And so this fog is moving up. And so you can see your villagers that are getting left behind. And so you need to really think about what is the best way to optimize to get everybody safely to the boat. There's also conflicting objectives, I feel, as well in this, because if you are the first person to get certain types of villagers into their matching boat, the boats are all different colors as well, and you want to get the villager color into that boat. So sometimes it's not always...
Yeah.
You've got to cross the board. And so do you want to race ahead to get the bonus points for going there first, but at the sacrifice of some other villagers that are left behind? Or do you want to try and get everybody to the boat at the same time, but do that in a slower way?
Right.
So I think it's going to be a really interesting race game.
Okay, it reminds me a little bit of Race to the Raft, with like the whole just trying to get your cats out, but in that one it's like no cat left behind, whereas this one it sounds like some...
Also, get out of the way because I'm going to push your villagers aside so my villagers
chaos.
can get to the boat. Yeah. Chaos. But yeah, I really like the abstract nature of this. I'm not sure if it's going to work for Maggie because of that, but like I'm really intrigued to see how the puzzle plays out. It will be available for sale, I think, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's just demo. It was on crowdfunding. They haven't released any information about that. So let me know in the comments if you know. But that is my number 5, The Frog Escape from Paradise.
My number 4 is a game called Rock Hard 1977, which is all about becoming a rock star, a music legend in the 70s. And this game was designed by Jackie Fox, who was actually a legend in her own right. She was part of the Runaways, so it's that 70s amazing rock band. And so in this game, what you're going to be trying to do is you're kind of like a struggling musician starting out, and you're going to be like writing songs, rehearsing, trying to play gigs, trying to like leverage publicity. It's interesting that they've got like one of the elements is like they've got candy to try and like get you through. And Jackie has said, look, candy doesn't have to mean drugs. It actually can be sort of anything else that you might be using to try and get you through that may not be necessarily the best thing long term. But obviously, you know, also knowing the history of rock and roll in the 70s and just in general. Yeah, I think it's one theme that I'm really intrigued to play. Also, the I feel it's like the player boards, they look like little like amps. Yeah. So that like with the dials and everything, and the dials go up to 11, so you can crank it up to 11. So if you all know what that inside joke is, so I'm really excited by that one. That is, did you have anything?
I do have something to add because I did look into this game and it was very close to being on my list again. I just can't put everything on my list, but I wasn't sure because they say that it's actually lighter than it looks, and so I wasn't sure what kind of weight it would be. But one of my favorite elements of this game mechanically is the fact that I believe every 3 turns you need to go and do your day job. If you don't, something bad happens. But it kind of is reminiscent of the theme in that like you can't just give up what you're doing to follow your passions and love, just like we have day jobs and we're not doing cardboard full time. But and so you've got to go and do your boring day job in order to fund the lifestyle, the rock star lifestyle. I just really love that. Very thematic, but also like really well built into the mechanics.
And mechanically speaking, it's like it sounds like it's a lot of like worker placement and some set collection, and obviously different ways of collecting points. So yeah, really, really intrigued by that one. So that's Rock Hard 1977.
My number 4 is a series of expansions, but driven by one expansion in particular that I'm probably most excited about of all the expansions that are coming out, and that is Decorum moving out.
You love that game.
I love Decorum, and you know, if you've been watching the channel for a while, there's only a few co-op games that make it into this household, and that one, I would just never get rid of it. I absolutely love the dynamic that it creates when you are attempting to, in this game, you are attempting to furnish a house or decorate a house, and you're working with other people in order to set up the house the way you want it based on the rules you've been given, and they all have separate rules, and so you're trying to find the place where those rules intersect and allow the house to be set up that satisfies everybody's conditions.
In a very passive-aggressive way. You can't just directly say what it is that you
can't just say, I need to have a yellow...
I love it, or that's not to my taste. I don't think it's us. It doesn't... Yeah.
And that is... The table talk is the best part about that game, because you're just like, no, I don't think that looks really that good. I'm going to move it back. And it's that really passive-aggressive tension. And what better expansion to add to this game than moving out? Because as we all know, moving house is one of the biggest pressures that you could place on a couple.
On anyone.
On anyone, really. But definitely it tests a relationship, because you are... You know,
it's friendships, tests families, it tests
stressful
time. It's
a
testy time.
And so in this game, you are now trying to fill vehicles or cars with your stuff. So you're going to have to, agree on how to best fill out these cars. And there's also the addition of moving boxes and bubble wrap, these really cute little bubble wraps. And I love the artwork for this game. And I saw this expansion. I was just like, that could not be more thematically...
It's pretty thematically
perfect for a passive-aggressive co-op game. So it is definitely on my must-buy list. I would always love to have everything about Decorum. But that leads me to talk about expansions in a secret way, and not add them to my list, because I'm sneaking them in. There's 3 other expansions that I really want to talk about. Forest Shuffle Alpine. I really also love the game Forest Shuffle. The Alpine expansion brings in a new icon type, the Alpine. It brings in a couple of new suits, but I think the most interesting thing about it is that it brings in the bearded vulture, which the bearded vulture as a creature does the same kind of thing as the bear, which allows you to burrow away cards into your cave, which may have been a bit underpowered before, and now it's giving you a new opportunity or a second opportunity to do that. So the Alpine expansion allows you to shuffle the cards in just into your regular deck, and kind of works in harmony with the rest of the animals that are in the deck. It also rebalances some of the underpowered other scoring conditions by bringing in other animals that work with them. So I think that seems like a no-brainer to just shuffle it into the pack.
Already so many cards in Forest Shuffle.
I know.
It's gonna make it even like...
What's not to like? Yeah. More cards.
Then more better.
Also, Radlands is a similar expansion. So Radlands Cult of Chrome is an expansion that brings in, I believe, 32 new campsites. So campsites in Radlands are the thing that you're trying to protect. They also give you powers throughout the game. And these campsites have been designed to not only bring more variability into the game, but also to rebalance again. So there's actually, I believe there's 32 new campsites, but then 10 ones that replace other ones that are about rebalancing.
Calibration going on as well.
Yeah. So if you enjoy Radlands, that might be something you want to pick up. And then the final one I'm going to talk about is Innovation Ultimate. Okay. So Innovation Ultimate is a, not deluxe, but an all-in-one set of innovation. It's got many, many expansions. This is actually a game that I've backed. But I'm intrigued to see it in real life. We have a love-hate relationship with Innovation. It's a wildly wacky game, and
do I like this experience? I don't know.
It's probably the craziest card game that we own. But
But you know what you're signing up for, like as you're kind of playing it. So it's like
But I've never played any of the expansions, so I'm really interested to see what each of those bring. So those are 4 expansions that I've put into one number, which is my number 4, Decorum moving out.
My number 3 is a game called FateFlip Washed Ashore. So I believe FateFlip is going to be the mechanic which is going to probably be used across many games. This is going to be a solo game. where you are, you're kind of stranded in an island and you're trying to survive. But the whole thing is a deck of tarot-sized cards, and it's a narrative game where you're also going to be making different decisions, and you're going to be able to either, you're discovering the whole story through 3 different chapters. I believe each chapter takes roughly around 30 minutes, and it's not a once and done. You can actually like replay them and have different ways that the story sort of plays out, because there are some elements where the cards, I believe, are kind of randomly selected, so you don't necessarily know exactly how a story is going to play out every time. The other thing is the way that the cards work is it reminds me a little bit of Palm Island, where the cards have information, 4 types of, it's like 4 areas of information, so like top, bottom, and then on the other side top, bottom. And so as you're playing through, it'll instruct you to either put it at the back of the deck upside down, or turn it over, short side or long side. And so that's how then it makes a lot of use of just this one deck of cards. So I love, I obviously love solo games, I love narrative games, and I love the sort of survival type theme. So this was just like perfect combo of things for me. And I love cards, and I love tarot cards. So like the tarot size, it ticks a lot of boxes for me. So I'm really intrigued to check it out.
Available for purchase?
Yes, I believe so. $15 from US dollars from Alicat Games is what it's listed at the moment. So yeah, that is FateFlip washed. What is it? Washed ashore.
Now, my number 3 is a demo only, but I'm excited about this demo. It is Knitting Circle, which is the sequel to Calico. The sequel to Calico, different designer, but Calico was the game that started it all for us. It was our very first review on this channel.
Yes.
It is a game that I still absolutely adore from Flatout Games. It is a wonderful puzzle that is extremely tight and punishing, and but it does have a bit of luck that some people don't like in the drawing of the tiles. But anyway, Knitting Circle, there's not a lot of information about, there's no rule book, but what I do know about it is that you're going to be drafting a similar type of tiles. This time you're drafting yarn tiles, and to draft them, you're going to be moving around a basket with your little cat, and your cat is moving around this rondelle to draft different tiles. Now, what did Calico need? A rondelle. Everyone needs a little more.
Has it been needed anything
rondelle.
For you to love it?
I know, I love it so much.
Just add a rondelle.
But I am excited that of all the additions you could add to Calico, it's a rondelle. So apparently it's going, then you take the yarn tiles, and then in some way you're going to be knitting them into garments. So I like the theme. I think it's really cute. It's very, it's kind of in that cozy same space as Calico. It's still got the cat. It sounds really cute. It's only in demo form, but I'm really looking forward to checking it out. Apparently, Flatout Games have said that if you like the intensity of the crunchiness of the puzzle of Calico, that this is in the same vein. So I'm excited about that. It is my number 3 Knitting Circle.
My number 2 is a game called Endeavor Deep Sea. Now, this looks to be quite a sort of eerie, satisfying experience, where you're essentially researchers looking at different like conservation efforts. And so you've got in your own player board, you've got all these different tracks that you're going to be enhancing or upgrading that will allow you to take more powerful actions across the different areas of the board. So one of the things is going to be your vessel, and that you can get more vessels as you're kind of exploring the ocean. It'll allow you to move around different areas. You're also going to be diving, and so there's going to be this element of exploring and revealing tiles that show you what's at the lower levels or depth of the ocean. You're also going to be doing using like sonar and acquiring or sort of collecting, doing different bits of research to acquire different sort of elements. And then you have this impact track. Now this impact board area is going to be different according to the scenario that you're playing. So there's 8 different scenarios, I believe, and so they all will kind of vary, and I believe they probably are kind of progressive, so they might get a little bit more complicated or just sort of different as you go along. And it just looks to be like a really interesting and satisfying what do you call it, combo of different Euro things that I tend to love. Now this is is it a remake or like a reimagining of
Endeavor.
Age of Sails. Yeah, and so this is a theme that I'm much more interested in now. So yeah, I'm really keen to get into it. And I've heard from some of the like friends and reviewers that have got a chance to kind of play it and try it out. They've really connected with it and really enjoyed it. So yeah, really excited to check it out.
I really want to talk about the theme a little bit more. We can switch roles for a bit, but I really like what Burnt Island Games has done in terms of not just the treatment of the theme, but also that they selected a conservation theme, conserving the ocean. And so because of that, they also went down the path of how can we make this game with no plastic? And they've now used those same methods and rolled them out to some of their other games, I believe.
Yeah.
But the inserts, so apparently in the original Endeavor, which we haven't played, the inserts were a key part of the game. Having that ease of setup is something that people really enjoyed. And so they knew they had to recreate the inserts. So they went and did research, and they've come up with a solution that's made out of sugarcane instead of plastic. So I can't imagine that is cheap, but I really appreciate the fact that they are talking about conservation. So they wanted to make all these changes. They're going to wrap the game in paper when it's delivered to backers and little things. Little things like that. That of course we want to see the industry moving to more sustainable practices. So good on them, and I can't wait to try this game as well.
Yeah. Also, it looks like there's some positive interaction in terms of like where you go different places. Someone else goes there, and you can have like you activate these synergies, which kind of makes sense thematically as well. Like in terms of someone's advancing on research, you build on that research and you all kind of get to benefit from that as well. It is competitive. Actually, it's you can play competitively, you can play cooperatively, and then there's also a solo mode. So 3 different types of modes that you can approach. So that is Endeavor Deep Sea.
Competitive. My number 2 is a game called SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. I'm just going to call it SETI from now on, as I'm sure everybody else will. This game is the next kind of heavy Euro from CGE. They always do a great job of Euro, so I was really intrigued to see this one. It is a space theme, which is not our favorite setting, as you know. But the board is really cool in this game. I think that a lot of people are going to be drawn in by the table presence of this. It has a rotating universal galaxy at the center of it, so the board all shifts and changes. It reminds me a little bit of Last Light in that regard, with the planets moving around. But in this game, there's an element of timing, because I believe at some points the planets, you won't be able to see them, and other points they're revealed, and when they're revealed, that's when you want to go out to them to take samples from that planet. And it is a very much a resource management style Euro game where you're going to be, gaining resources in order to trade them in for upgrades to your telescope, to your supply, to your equipment, that type of thing. And this is just in demo form. I haven't seen a rule book or anything, but I'm intrigued enough by the player boards and by that central board that it just looks like crunchy Euro that we would enjoy. So that's why it's my number 2. Don't know much about it. Going to try and get a demo so that we can talk about it more. But it's a number 2 SETI.
Well, technically your number 2. That was your number 2.
My number 2.
Yeah.
You are welcome to have your own list.
I'm very keen to check it out as well, but it just didn't make my list. Now, going on to my number 1. My number 1 is Windmill Valley, which is by designer Danny Garcia, who did Barcelona and also Arborea, which I loved. So I'm really keen to get to play this one. So in Windmill Valley, we are in the Netherlands, and we're growing tulips, and it's just a super colorful board. And so and actually one of the coolest things is that we have every player has these like cogwheel sort of mechanism system, and that's essentially what determines what actions you're going to be able to take. Now those cogwheel spots are upgradable, so these are things that you can enhance and upgrade and make more powerful along the way. But what determines the speed or the movements of those cogwheels is the floodgate. So you actually can kind of open up or shut down the floodgates, which then dictates how much water obviously it's gonna come in, and then also it's gonna rise or lower the water levels. And based on that speed is how many movements of your cog it's going to happen, and then will take place. And then you actually will have usually the option of taking either the action on the left or the action on the right. So But one of the things that you can upgrade is sometimes you can upgrade it so that it allows you to take both actions. So if like the upgrade has a little plus, it allows you to take both actions. And the types of actions that you're going to be doing, there's things like going to the markets to gain tulips or planting those tulips, which then becomes its own little puzzle of like rows and columns and colors. You can also be sending off those tulips to foreign trade. You can also be building windmills as well, which will get you different benefits. So it's just a combination of Euro-y type things that you're going to be collecting and ways of getting points, which I know that like I usually love, but again, like Danny Garcia is a great designer, so I'm really keen for this one. Apparently, it is lighter than both Barcelona and Arborea.
Yeah.
To be fair, like Barcelona, I felt like Arborea was like it actually was fairly heavy because there's a lot of things going on. So that might be more accessible then. Like it might mean that then it's
and that's one of the main reasons why, even though I've got light games on my list, so this makes no consistent sense. But when we met with Board and Dice and heard about this game to begin with, which I think was all the way back in Essen last year, they said this is going to be a much lighter title. But then as I read the rules, I didn't think it was as light. Maybe they've built on that and built it out a little bit.
I think it's lighter than those other two.
Sure, but they make very heavy games.
Yeah, it's still like a proper, it feels like proper medium.
And at the time they were telling us about Nucleum, which of course is much heavier. So I'm intrigued to try this one out as well. I do like the wheel system. It reminds me a bit of Gutenberg and also Barrage, so that kind of inspiration. So intrigued to try that out too.
So that is my number one, Windmill Valley.
And my number one is a game called The Gang. And this is a cooperative game. Who would have thought? It's number one on my list. And I'll tell you why it's number one. It is the sequel, not sequel, it's the spiritual sequel to The Crew. So it's being released by Kosmos. It is a card game that is based on poker, Texas Hold'em in fact, and it is a cooperative poker game. What?
Say what now?
Say what now?
How does this work?
And that's kind of how people reacted when The Crew came out and it was cooperative trick taking with missions. What? How does that work? And so when I was reading the rulebook for this one, I can see that this is going to be another one of those, wow, I'm really quite familiar with these types of games, but there's enough of a twist on it that this makes it really interesting, which is why it's my number one. But how does this game work? Essentially, all players are going to be contributing to the ranking of a number of poker runs. And so you all have your own hand, and in Texas Hold'em style, you're going to start with 2 cards, and then a card is going to be revealed in the center of the table, one at a time. So when a card is revealed, everyone is going to look at the hands that they now have and think about how strong is my hand relative to all the other players around the table, which is kind of what you do in poker. But in this sense, you're trying to cooperate with each other. And you're thinking, wow, I might have a flush in my hand. So now I can't communicate that with the other players because it's a limited communication game. But what there is in this game is a series of poker chips that have a number on them relating to what you perceive to be the strength of your hand. So you might have 4 poker chips on the table, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you think you've got the weakest hand, you'll take the 1 to communicate to the others around the table that, hey, I don't have a very good hand. But maybe if you think you've got a flush or something great, you might take the 4 and be like, you know what, I think I've got the best hand here. I'm trying to signal that to you. And so then everyone else quietly takes one of those poker chips. Now, what's interesting about this game is then the game continues, you reveal another card, and instead of getting rid of those chips, you're going to get 4 new chips of a different color. And now you're going to have to do that again. So maybe I was aiming for a flush and you just turned over a card that destroys my hand. And so I've gone from a 4 to a 1. So I'm going to now take the 1 to communicate to everybody that I was on track for something great. And now it's ruined.
Hopes have been dashed.
Yes. And so if a clever poker player, or if you're familiar with poker, you could probably work out what that person might have thought they had and now why that's changed suddenly. And so then you're trying to deduce what you think the hand is that everybody has. You do that again and again until the final round where it's only that last draft of the chip that matters. When everybody reveals their hands, you need to accurately rank every player's hand of cards in terms of poker hand strength.
Yeah.
And if you get it right, because this is a heist theme, I didn't really mention the theme because it's kind of just poker themed,
by the side.
but it's a heist and you're going to be able to unlock the first bank vault and you're trying to unlock 3 bank vaults in order to beat the game. So I believe they're going to have some kind of, you know, like not campaign, but I think like a challenge kind of mode, similar to the crew.
Like scenarios and
that get harder and harder. But I'm just really intrigued by this. Of course, what drives a lot of my list is kind of novel ways of using known mechanics or interesting new things. So it really like, I don't know if it'll be great, but I'm excited to try it.
Opposite poker face, because usually you're trying to not give away what you have, and this one's like you're trying to give away what you have. So it's like it's a weird dynamic to experience. Yeah, intriguing.
Yeah. Anyway, that is my number 1, the game. Now, I think by this point in the video, we've probably mentioned 30 games, so
it's gonna take a while to like add all of the different covers and things.
It certainly is. That sounds like the editor's problem.
That poor editor, whoever they might be.
But
I pity the fool.
There are so many great games coming out at GenCon, and there are so many other games that, you know, we just want to check out. There's one game in particular that I just wanted to add as part of a bonus round. I know, I'm sorry. But there's a game coming out called Gateway Island, which is by Van Ryder Games, which is a game that is designed to teach people about 21 key game mechanics. So it's a series of mini games that is designed to upskill gamers and for them to test out using one game what they like. And then if you decide you like something like worker placement, then it has suggestions of games to look at next. I just think that's a really cute idea. Haven't seen it done before. And even though that's not a game for us because we'd rather just, you know, get our friends to play the 400 board games that we own.
I will level you up with a full worker placement game.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if you don't like it, okay, we won't play more worker placement. But you've committed to a 3-hour.
Exactly. Time for some Vital Lacerda. You've had your fair warning. But anyway, so that's the entire list. I promise, Maggie, there are no more games.
It's like the whole backstage, open the door, and we're like, yeah, you can go. Okay, everyone going. Like that was all of the games that snuck in.
Wait until you see my shopping list that I'm going to send you out to line up for.
Oh, no.
Anyway, if you do see us at GenCon, please come up and say hi. We love meeting with the community and
you might see me with a panic look as I'm running around. I'm trying to tick off all the things.
Maggie taking bags back to the hotel because we can't carry them all. But anyway, we put a lot of effort into these videos, so please, if you like them, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.